This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law XRNT. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 23rd August 2019. The first article for discussion: should India tinker with its no first use policy? Here, India's nuclear doctrine is based on three pillars. They are one, no first use policy, credible minimum deterrence, and civilian control over the nuclear weapons. In this context, the no first use doctrine was based on circumstances. That's what Mr. Rajnath Singh, Defense Minister of India, has stated. In this context, let us analyze no first use policy. So, Prime Minister Modi has clearly stated that no first use policy is going to continue. It means it appears more to counter the rhetoric of Pakistan. Pakistan, whenever the tensions escalate between these two countries, it uses nuclear instability or nuclear escalation as a ground for interference of the various countries across the world. And President of United States of America from time to time calling Kashmir as a nuclear flashpoint. It is the perception which the Pakistan is building across the world. In this context, any kind of ambiguity with regard to India's nuclear stance or nuclear doctrine will further lead to this nuclear escalation. And the second point is, whenever the policy ambiguity exists, then it can provide for arms race in the country. Already, you have Pakistan talking about full spectrum deterrence. It means Pakistan is going to have both tactical nuclear weapons and strategic nuclear weapons. So these tactical nuclear weapons are small suitcase-like nuclear bombs which can be used in war field. So these tactical nuclear weapons, which are going to be an important weapon in the Pakistan's armory. And India has clearly stated that India's retaliation will apply both for the tactical and strategic nuclear weapons. And the third danger is, today the dual use delivery systems and weapons are increasing. It means the conventional warhead or the carrying machine or missile can also be fitted with nuclear missile, and conventional submarine can also be fitted with nuclear missiles. Because of this dual use service delivery systems, a misunderstanding can develop and it can escalate into nuclear war. That is the danger which we have to observe. And another point clearly here, when India developed the nuclear weapons, Pakistan also developed that. And this nuclear overhang has said to be undermined the conventional abilities of India. So conventionally, India's military is much superior to Pakistanis, but the nuclear weapons, both of them possessing it, has neutralized this conventional superiority. In this context, Balakot attacks and added to that, these surgical strikes have proved that the conventional maneuvering is still having the space vis-a-vis Pakistan. Now, no first use, this needs only retaliatory capacities. And India built a triad for this nuclear triad, where a missile can be launched from surface, air or water. But when we are shunning this no first use and moving towards first use and initiation policy, obviously this triad becomes redundant. We need to raise our armory capabilities. The biggest challenge if India ever changes its no first use policy is to build the right capabilities necessary for it. That is what is the biggest challenge over here. So in this context, this article clearly says that India's no first use policy has served it in the past and will be able to serve it in the future. And then the existing situation review is a part of the normal course of action for any country. And next important statement which it made is, across the world, the nuclear and also arms control is crumbling. So previously START, that is Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, all these arms control treaties which were there between US and Russia are crumbling, and nuclear review posture of United States of America is clearly talking about limited nuclear war now. It means the world is gearing up for this particular nuclear weaponization again, which is not good news. These are the points we need to look into. Taking a far east turn to deepen friendship. This is about India-Russia friendship. When Indira Gandhi signed Friendship and Peace Treaty with Russia, it has helped India to win the 1971 war. When US and UK came in support of the Pakistan, it was the Russia which has come in support of India. Almost the Russian warships and US warships were there head to head in Indian Ocean. So this has provided a decisive victory to India. In this context, the Vladivostok, which is part of the Asian region of Russia, is still underdeveloped. And the Chinese have a maximum presence with regard to industry is concerned. Now, India and Russia shall deepen their friendship again. Because of India's growing strategic relationship with USA, the doubts are cast in Russia. So India has tried to clarify across all the forums that Indo-Pacific region, which it is conceptualizing at the Shangri-La dialogue, it is going to be a multipolar, it is meant to create a multipolar dialogue. It is not just to polarize India against any other country. So India is willing to engage with multiple different countries rather than fixing it to one or the other powerful nation. And the second thing, it also stated that India always wanted to have an inclusive policy. In this context, today the Russia and India relations are deepening, especially surrounding the S-400, this missile system. And the economic relationship, if it gets strengthened, like Russia's Act or Pivot to Asia policy and then India's Act East policy, both can converge with each other. And this region of convergence is this far east of Russia, that is Vladivostok. And the second, there is a new word which is growing in diplomacy that is called para-diplomacy. It is not just engaging at nation to nation level, it is engaging at the subnational level. The state to provinces relations, these are called as para-diplomacy. This also can be used. And the second, to converge these two areas, what is necessary is called connectivity. So to increase the connectivity, we have to ensure sea route from Chennai to Vladivostok. Now we are circling through the Central Asia. In this context, if it is developed through South China Sea, it will also act as an answer to the hegemony of China in Eurasia. And Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, all these countries are willing to look towards Russia. And Russia also wants to counter the dominance of China in Eurasia. In this context, strategically also this relation can pay off. That is what the author is talking about. Increasing investment to stimulate growth. So in this article, we have two things, the cyclical factors and then structural dimensions towards stimulating growth. So the biggest challenge for the growth fall is weakening of gross savings rate. The fall is related to household savings. So the household savings are falling from 2011 onwards. And second, the public sector and private sector savings, they are more or less stagnant or fell marginally. So in this context, the capital formation investments in private sector and savings rate in private sector is matching each other. It means the private sector investment needs are being fulfilled by the savings in that particular sector itself. So whatever the household savings which are there, these can be used towards public investments rather than shifting towards private investments. But what is the problem over here? It is the FRBM Act. So FRBM Act has kept strict limitations on fiscal deficit and revenue deficit targets. Whatever the savings, household savings which have to be made into public investments, these need to be done in a particular manner. So the revenue expenditure shall be decreased and all this investment shall go into capital expenditure. Then only we can revive the growth. So the revenue expenditure can be kept it as zero or revenue deficit can be kept it as zero and capital expenditure shall be increased by relaxing the FRBM Act. That is what is the essence the article talks about. Now remember again, the FRBM Act is a limitation for increasing the public investments and it has to be amended. There is a demand from many dimensions for this. And the growth revival is also objective of the state. It cannot purely depend upon private investments. That's what we can. Sorry. The next is internal affairs. So, National Register of Citizens, it is coming to a closure. Then what happens to the people who are not in that particular list? These become stateless citizens. They also have these foreigners tribunals, that is another matter. But immediately they become stateless. BJP manifesto has clearly stated that they will be deported to Bangladesh. But today, the government of India has agreed to Bangladesh position that NRC is an internal affair. It means Bangladesh taking them back is a closed matter. Then obviously the stateless citizens will become a humanitarian catastrophe for India, who are close to 4 million. And the next is the Citizenship Act also is trying to discriminate between the Muslims and Hindus. So here the minority groups from this can apply for the Indian citizenship. Then what about the other groups like Muslims, etc.? So in this case, this Citizenship Act is going to be discriminatory. Then how it has to be handled? What are the government's plans after NRC? It has to be made clear. Is new norms. After announcement of the budget, the foreign capital, especially portfolio investments, these are flying out from India. So in this scenario, how to attract these investments back to India and revive the financial markets? A committee was appointed, Mr. Khan's committee. It has spoken about relaxation of regulatory norms for FPI. The first is previously at least 20 investors are necessary to be recognized as an FPI. This norm is being relaxed. And the second, the mutual funds which are having offshore funds, and added to that central banks which are not with Bank of International Settlements, and then smart cities to raise the municipal bonds. All these are being allowed. So in this context, the more and more investment opportunities, liberalized norms for foreign private investors will portfolio investors will improve investment climate in India. That is what this article talks about. The Belt and Road blocks. This is about Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Why did China first start the Belt and Road Initiative? China has huge overcapacities in the manufacturing sector. These overcapacities, when global meltdown time, has led to loss of employment and also slowdown in China. So to use these overcapacities, it has started Belt and Road Initiative. Now, is this successful? After initiation of BRI also, there is shutdown of the companies in China today. It is because China's growth strategy itself has certain pitfalls. It is an export-led growth. So today China is trying to change this towards increasing something called domestic consumption. And the second, what are the challenges with Belt and Road Initiative? One is it is highly secretive. Any international project, it calls for open bidding and competitive tendering, practice of independent pre-feasibility studies. All these are being violated. Second, unviability of the project. If we see carefully, this particular routes which are developed from London to China, and then oil pipelines which are developed from Gwadar to China, so Tianjin province in China, these are very expensive. To ship a barrel of oil, it costs $20 extra over this pipeline. And the second, and shipping is much easier and cheaper when compared to these railroads. So that's why the project viability is not been properly estimated. And implementation of these projects is creating huge interest burden on the respective countries. If you talk about Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, the government is requesting China to decrease its scope of investments because the interest rates are too high, and it is creating a debt burden on these particular countries. And finally, the strategic concerns are also there for countries such as India. The real objectives of China are not being disclosed to this. So these need to be addressed to make it comfortable. Ahead of GH7 summit, Modi Macron hold talks. So France always was supportive of India at all the circumstances. Even it is during its nuclear tests, it sustained its diplomatic and also strategic relations with India. So the Rafale deal has become very much controversial. So this week it is expected that France will deliver first set of the Rafale planes. We have to wait and see. FATF Asia Pacific Group made blacklist Pakistan. So FATF is different and its wing Asia Pacific Group is different. Once it blacklists, obviously there is a good chance FATF also blacklists Pakistan. Once it gets blacklisted, no more foreign investments comes into this country and servicing of its debt becomes very much difficult. And managing capital inflows through IMF and other international institutions also becomes difficult. The financial markets will melt down in Pakistan. It pushes the country towards an economic crisis. And FATF wants to keep it in blacklist because the Pakistan did not take any of serious actions or enforcement on money laundering and terrorism over there. Innovation is key to become $5 trillion economy. In this, the Miss Rekha Menon, what she says is, India is becoming an innovation economy. That is a good point. But sustaining the innovation is the challenge. It means sustaining a growth centered around innovation that has to be addressed. It means that more institutional mechanisms have to be put in place to sustain this particular ecosystem. Supreme Court refers Oxytocin ban to larger bench. Oxytocin is an enzyme which is used in pregnancy. So this is used to arrest the bleeding in pregnant cases. And the second thing is it is also used in dairy industry to artificially extract the milk from animals. Because of its misuse in dairy industry, the union government has banned the private production and asked a public sector undertaking to produce it. So because of this, the demand which is there in the healthcare sector is not being met. So the oxytocin need to be allowed to be produced by the private sector to meet the healthcare demands. That is what is the issue over here. And finally, very much have a great day. All the best.